the notification. There it is. Notification. We're live. I saw there were people like waiting in the little waiting room thing.
Did you announce the time that we were doing
I'll tell you
this?
what. One nice thing is that it's good. It's good to have Bundy back.
July, boys, because we love hockey. July so much. There's so much going on after the draft for like that 3 weeks that I don't know what to do to contain myself.
Bundy, what's going on August the 4th?
Yeah, it is. I know. I heard like somebody saying yesterday, like, "Yo, hockey's back. We're ready to go." And I'm like, "Hey, slow down, guy. Just slow down a little bit."
Yeah,
hockey's back.
Yeah.
Do we have a date on training camp, by the way?
Yeah, they announced it. I think wasn't it like September? I think it starts September.
Oh, there goes my camera. There goes my camera. I need to find out what's wrong with this camera.
September 12th, is that what it is?
It's 11. I think it's the 11th, actually, to be honest with you. I think it's
you sure?
the 11th. No, might be the following week, but I think it's
because I don't remember seeing it. That's why I'm asking.
I thought it was later this year for some reason.
Maybe it is. The season doesn't start till later this year.
Wasn't last year the 22nd?
Let me hold on. Let me see.
I swore last year was the 22nd. September 22nd.
Keep swearing. That'll do good.
That's Bundy's job. Hashtag Bundy bomb.
No, I'm gonna look at the Flyers preseason schedule because I
didn't see it. I was looking through my emails and everything.
And they didn't put this preseason. Why did they put the preseason schedule up on their?
Well, I guess now we're gonna have to send some texts over to the Flyers.
No, I'll get it.
Bundy, he still hasn't noticed, by the way.
He hasn't.
The backwards hats.
Yeah,
I noticed it as soon as I walked in.
The SanFilippo salute.
SanFilippo salute.
But here's the problem with you two jabronis.
Is you don't use Snaphat.
I don't use snapbacks.
You do the
fitted.
The fitted. All right, hold on. Please hold.
Okay.
There we go.
Let me just go back to normal again. All right, I got like the serious morning rug right now, and that's the end of it.
This makes my head look really round. Almost looks like a do-rag. I don't know if I like that. I think I'm going to go back to this one. All right.
You guys are beauts. Let me tell you.
We've got a heck of a show. I feel. What's the Steve Buscemi in the movie where he's like, "Hello there, fellow young people."
Oh,
that's what I feel like. Wearing my hat backwards.
I'm just trying to remember what movie that is.
Somebody will know in the comments. I don't remember. All right. And are you excited for today? Are you happy to have Bundy back? Let's start there.
Of course. I'm always happy to have Bundy back. I'd rather talk to Bundy than you. For God's sake.
I'm out. Bye.
All right. You ready to do your intro?
It's good. Just like I said, you guys are keeping her going in July. And I had a couple things going on in the last 2 weeks. So great shows, guys. It's hard. I mean, it really is off season. It's hard to pull things together because there's sometimes just not a lot going on. And that's for every single sport and thing out there. So, but again, I saw somebody yesterday who was maybe the hockey.
Oh, watch yourself. You're starting to do your normal intro banter here, fella. We didn't start the show yet. You gotta be careful. You don't have to repeat. All right, let's start. Should we start? Are we good to start? Everybody wants to start?
Yes, please do. Yes.
Okay. Oh, yes. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into Snow the Goalie, the Only Flyers podcast, the People's Podcast, Players Podcast, Prognosticators Podcast, Pedialyte Podcast, Pampers Podcast, the Pterodactyl Podcast, the Only Flyers Podcast. We really are. I mean, we really are the Only Flyers Podcast. Just putting it out there. Anyway, I'm Russ Joy on Twitter @JoyOnBroad. And while I usually like to intro Anthony and SanFilly on Twitter, I would rather go to the man in the middle if you're watching on YouTube. And that is, of course, Bundy. Chris Therien, he is back. He's back for the month of August. Look at him. August 4th. Here we go. It's an anniversary gift that he gave to me coming back to the show. Bundy, how are you? How are you, you beaut?
Good. I know we're just before the show and just talking about, we're still in like the early, like kind of the dog days of hockey. And as tradition goes, guys will start probably coming back into the rinks like end of August, start training. But you guys carried some heavy water, fellas, the last couple of weeks. Those July ones for hockey season, where you're 2 weeks past the draft, 2 weeks past free agency. And I'll tell you what, that's when you put the real work in. trying to figure out big stuff up to entertain our great audience. But no, it's good to be back. It's August. It's some exciting stuff going on, and I'm looking forward to the season starting and at least talking hockey once a week up until that point. So good to be back, guys. Hope your summer's going good and everybody else is out there as well.
Yeah, man. So far, so good. Ant, how are you? I talk to you way too much.
Well, I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this, Russ. You need to start getting a little bit more creative with your silent P words. You went pterodactyl.
Pseudonym. The pseudonym podcast.
And there's better ones than that.
Okay. Give me one.
The pneumatic.
Ooh, pneumatic.
Podcast.
I do like mnemonic. Mnemonic would be a good one. All right, we'll work on these.
Yes.
The pneumonia podcast, when you inevitably get sick this winter, Ant. So we'll keep that one in the chain.
There you go. That's coming. You can save that one.
Hey, by the way, there are all kinds of things in the comments that are going on as we get ready to start this show. Hunter likes the time. M. Bodine says at least it's not 6 a.m.
Exactly. Those are mongrel hours. Nobody does shit at 6 a.m. in the morning.
Did you see
maybe that has to be a shirt, by the way. Mongrel hours.
I love it. Did you see Flyers? Eric tweeted yesterday when you announced that we were doing the show today that he was going to set his alarm for 6 a.m.
Did anybody tell him not to?
No.
Poor guy. He's probably up waiting.
Pacing around the house for 4 hours.
Flyers Eric is a friend of mine. He's a friend of a huge friend of the show. But he would we go back 20 some years, me and Eric. And you know what? I'm not gonna lie. Like I love him. Like he's just a dynamite dude. He's great. He is the Flyers fans. Like I mean, that's you can't get more passionate than that. But he'll actually text me like, "You clowns gonna do a show this week?" I'm like, "Yeah, just hold on a minute, Eric. We're getting to it. All right, pal. We're getting to it."
Love it.
I got this great thing that I got to actually. Can I share Eric's story while we're here?
Yeah, I guess so. Sure.
Yeah.
Right. So he makes no bones about it. But when I used, I do radio or TV, he would be like, "Hey, you call me Pops." He's like, I'm gonna be at the airport tonight when you guys land. You give everyone like a greeting. It's like 3 a.m. I'm like, that's commitment, right? And so some nights we'd be coming in and it was Coates'd be at the back of the plane or Jonesy. And Eric would text me at like 9 o'clock, like, big win tonight. I'll be at the airport. And I knew we'd be flying back from like Denver. And it would be like 3 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, really? And so I'm thinking, after I heard it over and over again, I kept saying to myself that this is just, hang on, guys, I got this stupid thing going off here. Eric would be at the airport waiting for us. And I would know that he was going, and I'd tell Coatesy, I'd be like, "What do you think, Coatesy? $20. I bet you $20 that Eric's super fan's gonna be waiting for us." And Coatesy be like, "No fucking way. There's no chance of me sitting there unless he's crazy." So we get in at like January 15th, January 20th, like after a game, and sure as shit, there's Eric with his shorts on and a t-shirt, like, "Go get him, boys! Big win tonight!" I would stop the car, like I'm like, "Holy jeez, this is commitment, man! Like this is unbelievable."
But I love the fact that you took inside information and took money off of Coatesy to do it.
Yeah, and I bought myself lunch the next day. It became a running joke after that because Coatesy he'd be like, "How did you know that?" It never stopped. So anytime we got a big win, we could pretty much count on Eric being there and Coatesy probably losing, I would say probably $100 to me in his life. And I've repatriated that to him many times. So it's all good. But it was certainly worth the bet where 10 guys were like, and I knew, I'm like, 20, absolutely he'll be here. Coach is like, "No, there's no way. There's no way he'll be there." 3 a.m. And there he was. We'd look out the window of the plane and we'd see his car. I'd be like, "There he is. That's another $20, Coatesy."
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
I have to point this out really quickly because Hunter Michkov set the over-under today for the Bundy bomb at 19.5 minutes. And I think we bantered for about 4 minutes. So by my calculations, Bundy dropped a Bundy bomb in about 4 minutes or less. So
you took the under.
Let's see. Eric H took the under.
Well, and then
Darth Flyer took the under.
But wait, did you see Eric H followed up with the money?
The money line too.
No. Go the one right underneath that one, Russ. Always bet the under.
Always bet the under. Always bet the under.
Yes.
Fry Star Zero. Bundy bomb. We did it.
Nice.
Jerry Martin says the under is for anyone who's scared. Always take the over. Whoa, Gary, I don't know. I don't know. Darth Flyer, as sure as the sun will rise in the east. Hunter said next week, setting the over-under at 3.5 minutes.
Yeah, don't let me know what they are, because they're just ingested. When it comes out, it comes out. And, again, it started off because I said, well, sorry one day, because in case kids were listening. And I'm like, well, what, it is a podcast. It wasn't like regular radio. So we're having fun with it. And I'm wondering if I'll ever go a show without having it now, but I think someone's going to have to poke me if I forget, which I doubt. You won't have to do that, guys.
Keith DeBethum. I don't know. Hey, fellas, first time catching one live. Love the show. Keep up the great work. Did I miss the Bundy bomb yet? I hope you didn't. I hope you were here for it.
Hope you were here for it.
By the way, there's just one. There could be another one. You never know.
That's true. By the way, I don't know if this is going to make the podcast. I don't remember if this was pre-podcast. I think this was before the people who listen in the podcast feed. They missed the banter that you can only get on YouTube and when we're live. But the Steve Buscemi quote, the hey there, fellow young people, was from 30 Rock.
Oh, okay.
I didn't realize that. I thought it was from a movie, but okay. Listen, there's a lot to get into.
What Patrick check in from Sweden again? He's having coffee.
Yeah. You know what? So Bundy, I don't know if you've been catching on to this or not. It's been a few weeks since you've been on, but we've been getting people checking in from Sweden. We've had people checking in from Finland. We've had our friends in Australia. We have multiple listeners in Australia. We have our doctor from SoCal who checks in. So
awesome.
People are everywhere. I mean, we've got a lot of. Remember what was that old adage? The sun never sets on the British Empire. The sun never sets on the Only Flyers podcast. So
love it. All right, get into what you. So you have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, well, so it's funny because when we come up with this and when we talk, we do our little bit of pre-planning on the show, which isn't very much, admittedly. And when we sit down and we say like, all right, well, these are like 4 or 5 standout topics that we absolutely have to talk about. This week, I think, is the first time that we've kind of sat back and said, I don't know. What do we talk about? And there are 2 things that have come up recently that are worthy of discussion. It's the title of the show, and it's something that people are going to be excited about, and it's the future of the team. Now, I will tell you guys a little bit later in the episode, I want to get into like potential bounce back season candidates for the Flyers, just so that we're paying a little bit of attention to what we have domestically with the big team. But Matvei Michkov had a really nice showing in the first preseason game in the KHL, had a goal, had an assist, had a shootout goal. Cutter Gauthier is looking good. It seems to be something that people are really excited about. So I feel like we should probably lead off with something that people are excited about. The most notable thing to come out of that Michkov performance is that apparently he and his coach had the discussion about moving him to center, or at least experimenting with him at center. And he was quoted as saying he watched a bunch of Sidney Crosby film when preparing to play center. As we mentioned, 2 points in the first game, also had a shootout goal. I'm not going to sit here and say, guys, is Matvei Michkov going to be a center in the NHL? But are you intrigued at all by the fact that this 19-year-old player who has all the skill in the world is at least experimenting with playing in the KHL at center?
I don't mind the fact that any young player tries to find multiple roles and creates flexibility in his game. It also creates flexibility for the Flyers, because look at what Gauthier is doing, right? I mean, Gauthier was originally, when he was scouted, he was a winger, and they're trying him out at center in college. He played there last year. He's going to do it again this year, but you still don't know if that's going to translate to the professional ranks. So it's good to have that. Hey, we know you can play one position. Let's try it somewhere else, and while you're developing, and see if it works. If it does, great. Then you have guys. Look, think about it. How many times do centers play center, but then shift out and play on the wing because that's where they came from originally, right? So okay, you can go out there, whatever. It's better that you're learning the position as a teenager, or 19, 20 years old, and see if you can do it. And if you can, awesome. If you can't, no big deal. You're right back out to the wing where you were, scouted to begin with. So I think it's a great thing that he's trying it.
Yeah, I'm with Anthony, at least in terms of just having a developmental understanding of that position. And there'll be a difference, I'm sure, between the KHL and the NHL. for that position. I'm such a big fan of like that big, massive center. Like if you, I mean, I know they don't grow on trees. I'm not suggesting they do, but that's for me is what like that big, like the guy like that's somebody that you can draft really high that can carry that load of ice time, reliable in both ends of the ice, but can also produce. So yeah, I'm more in the like. I'm just going back thinking of like great scoring wingers that I played with, and there's not really a lot of them that I could ever say, you know, we can move in the center. Like if you asked me John Leclerc as a winger, you couldn't play him at center for a minute on the ice. Like, I mean, it was that he just didn't have the conceptual understanding of playing center. He's a goal scoring front of the net winger that was as good as anybody that played the game doing it. So it's not like a flip of a switch. It's like taking a left defenseman and putting them on the right side. There's an adjustment to that. But I'm a bigger believer in having a lot of size up the middle. I'm a huge believer of it, as a matter of fact. I don't think you can go far with the really a small type of winger or a center, like your lead center, through a 2-month grind if you're going to be a Stanley Cup winner. So I'm biased like that, but I think ultimately, just like Anthony said, having an understanding of the position, taking draws, knowing it, and listen, I'm not saying he can't become one. I'm just saying, you know, a true, authentic goal-scoring winger, which is he's in the cut of, don't usually become center iceman. It's like Tarasenko or Patrick Laine when he was scoring goals. It's not a center. It just doesn't make sense. They're programmed to shoot, to be positionally sound, like on power plays, whether the front of the net. But I do like just having a versatile edge to him. I wish Gauthier could play. I wish he were more of a center, because he does have more of the size stature. But as you said, they want to really, I think, try to find in the wing position, and maybe that big center like that they're talking about just isn't here yet. You know, we've talked about that for a couple of years. You know, what's going to come in, what's coming down the pipeline, and we even said it last summer. Like, you know, the player that maybe turns his team around, maybe it's Michkov now, but it may be another guy they haven't even drafted yet in the next year or two that ends up becoming that linchpin. Maybe that big center, you know, that we've been talking about that I like anyway, in the coming couple drafts. We're just not there yet. So that's what, from a rebuild standpoint, I like what's going on. They're remaining patient, letting kids develop. I know Michkov has he has to play over there. But I think their Cutter Gauthier move, and I know we're swinging from, you know, talking about moving wing to center, but I like him going back. We said that before. I think he needs to go back and absolutely dominate college hockey for a year, and then see what happens. But size up the middle to me is paramount, and I don't know if that guy's necessarily here yet. I don't think he is.
And by the way, I don't think it's a problem if we continue to fluctuate between talking about Michkov and Gauthier, because they're so.
Right.
You would think that their futures together for this team are so intertwined that it's okay to kind of play off one or the other. And you know, when we did Hunter Brody's show a couple weeks ago, I think it aired last week, but we talked to him 2 weeks ago. You know, you made a point about Gauthier as a center. I don't know if you want to kind of rehash that to give people an idea, but it was an interesting point.
What did I say?
You don't remember the clip about Gauthier, about like if the Flyers really believe?
I know. I was
giving me a hard time. Don't give me a hard time. Come on.
No, I think that if he was where he needed to be in his development at that position, that the Flyers would have made a much harder push to him and his family to leave school and come into the professional ranks this season. The fact that they didn't do that they didn't push for that, and they were completely comfortable with him going back to school for another year of development tells me that they were not ready. They don't think he's ready at that position yet, but they still think that he can get there. And so let's see another season in college playing that way. If after another season, I will say this now, you can mark it down, August 4th, 2023. I do not think there's any way on this earth that Cutter Gauthier goes back for a junior year of college. Right. So if after this season he does not portend, I say portend, not pretend, portend as a center, then he will be a winger when he comes into camp next season.
Okay.
Yeah, it's easier. To be honest with what he's saying, it's just easier being a winger as a young guy in this league than being a center in this league as a young guy. And that's the truth.
I mean, which is why I think, we kind of flip back. I think that's also why it's probably a nice thing to see Michkov at least experimenting with it. He's 19 and he's under contract for 3 years with the KHL. If somehow he's able to elevate his game, continue to produce the way he produces, get a better overall understanding of how to play that position, and then has that versatility when he does come over, if that's in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, if he has that ability to then process the game at probably the second strongest league in the world, you would think that that's going to set him up for success at the NHL level. And one of those things that, we've kind of touched on in the past, if you think of like a Morgan Frost, for so long, this organization only wanted to look at Morgan Frost as a center. They were opposed to even giving him a look at the NHL level as a wing. And at times you had to sit back and you go, like, maybe they've kind of stunted his growth, or maybe they've, cost themselves the ability to really evaluate what he is as a player, because you only have 4 center positions. And for at least the first few years of his career, they were clogged up with a Couturier, with a Nolan Patrick, with a Kevin Hayes. Then you weren't going to bring him up to be a 4C. You didn't want to play him at the wing. So they kind of limited what they could do with him. In the case of Michkov, if he proves that he can play center, or at least play it somewhat well, and then we know he knows how to play wing, it probably sets him up for a nice, successful little start to his career at the NHL level. So that's positive. We can look at that positively. I want to get to some of the questions, comments, and concerns over on YouTube. If you're watching live and you're watching on Twitter, that's fine. Okay, you can do that, but you can't really interact with us. So we'd encourage you to go over to youtube.com/@snowthegoalie, where you can drop your comments. If you're watching on Facebook, you can continue there as well. We just like YouTube a little bit better. We'll probably keep the show on Facebook for a while, just because it's habit for some folks. So trying to be nice. Rick Hines, by the way, said that we're helping him get through traffic on the George Washington Bridge in Manhattan. Thanks for the distraction. Don't be too distracted.
The worst drive. There is look, I think LA maybe is the only other place where the traffic is so ridiculous. But my word, if you are at rush hour trying to get over the GWB in New York, it's mind numbing. It's soul crushing. Like what happens there. One time we were coming from an event in Connecticut that was normally a 4-hour drive. We left it was on a Sunday in the summer, so everybody was coming back from vacation or whatever, and we left Connecticut at like 10:30 in the morning and did not get home until 11 p.m. at night because of the traffic in New York. It was the most awful drive I've ever done. I cringe at the notion of having to drive over that bridge. So
wow,
depends when you leave. Just depends when you leave.
Yeah, 100%. I was in New York twice in the last 3 weeks. I didn't have a bad drive. It might have just
no.
been,
but the GWB is past the tunnels to go into New York City. So you got to go like you're going to the Bronx or going north of New York. Really?
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Never mind.
So yeah, you don't have to
deal with that one where you're like heading up towards Connecticut and everything.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. Yeah. That bridge sucks. I've only done that once. Once in the last. That is the worst. I agree.
That is the worst.
Well, anyway, Rick, I hope that we're a good distraction, but please don't drive distracted. Distracted driving is drunk driving. Remember that.
Bundy, when you drive up to Ottawa, you don't have to go that way, do you? Or do you take?
No, I go up through Scranton, Wilkes-Barre.
Oh, you go that way, okay.
And then up 81, pass through Syracuse, Binghamton, Syracuse, Watertown.
Yeah.
And then Thousand Islands Bridge, Gananoque Way.
Yeah.
There we go.
Lovely stretch of land.
So let's get back to Michkov for a second here. Actually, you know what? Before we do, we should probably a word. I think we have a word for our sponsor over at walkingtheboards.com.
Wait. Hold on, Russ. I gotta do something before you do this.
Are you gonna set the timer?
I gotta set the timer.
Set that timer, baby. You go ahead and set it. I don't even know if I'm gonna look at the notes this time.
All right,
I've got it pretty. All right,
you ready?
Here we go.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
go.
I guess. Walkingtheboards.com is the go-to if you like going down the shore, if you care about Ocean City, if you want to know everything that's going on in Ocean City, events, restaurants. Heck, if you want to learn about real estate, if you think you want to buy a shore house, Go to walkingtheboards.com, sign up for the free, yes, that's right, free newsletter. And you can even opt into Shore Cribs. Shore Cribs is where you go for all of your real estate news. It's created, this whole thing was set up by Kyle Scott, the founder of crossingbroad.com. He and former Crossing Broad investor Mike Iredale got together to build what they call the Crossing Broad of the Shore. So go over to walkingtheboards.com, link in the description, sign up for the free newsletter, and you can get every bit of news and notes about what's going on in Ocean City. You wonder if that mini golf course is still there? Maybe a new pizza place, new ice cream place. Go to walkingtheboards.com, sign up for free newsletter, walkingtheboards.com. All right. That's it. I need to go a little bit longer. Hold on, right? Because we said 60 to 90. So we'll throw this in too. I signed up for walkingtheboards.com. Am I somebody who goes down to Ocean City all the time? I certainly am not. Do I feel like I've picked up an education about Ocean City, New Jersey, and what they've got going on? Indeed, I have. You can be just like me or not. Get educated. Walkingtheboards.com. Thanks for sponsoring the show. There we go. See, that's good. Nice job. Nice job. Yeah, minute 10. # blessed.
Good work.
Okay, thank you. I'm proud of myself. All right. Zilla092 says, Michkov showed me one thing. He gets excited, or he gets so excited when he scores or when a teammate scores. He genuinely loves the game. And I want to piggyback on that one with this one from Kylo Green. I still don't get the one media platform saying Michkov's teammates hate him. After his first goal, they look stoked, or everyone looks stoked on this team. They sure look like they hate him. Rolling eyes. So I think that's probably fair to point out. I would bring up the clip, but I don't know how this works on the YouTube with showing social media clips of the KHL. And I certainly don't want somebody named Boris knocking at my door about using their clip. So it's fair. Anyway, listen.
Don't
guys,
make me do it, Russ. No more Russian impersonations.
Now go ahead, Bundy. Boris Bundy. Bundy Boris. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Russ.
You'll feel moved. You'll feel moved by the spirit.
At some point, he'll just start.
Ross. Okay. All right. We'll come back to it. Guys,
Bundy, by the way, speaking of impersonations, Russ does an impersonation of you.
No, that's not true. All right, it's kind of true. I can kind of do a Bundy. I'll do it after the show.
So is that the business we're getting into now, Russ?
Yeah. All right. No, it's I
do some good ones too.
Do you?
I don't. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to use a head to impersonate you either. So whatever little games you want to start, I'll finish them.
Sorry for going off the rails there with that, but anyway, go ahead.
Where's that guy at who complains when we talk about things that aren't hockey? Is he in the comments today?
I don't know. He's not here.
What do you think a hockey locker room looks like when you're getting ready for practice? As I'm sitting there with like the 20 guys when you're going for practice, right? Like we'd have the prices right on one TV. Somebody would be breaking someone's balls in the corner. We're talking nothing about hockey as we get ready for practice, which we do 6 days a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd sit there betting on who was closer to getting the Price is Right number, closest to the actual retail value.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. Anyways, we got to answer that question.
All right. So those questions tied together, right?
Yeah.
Michkov doesn't look like a cancer. He doesn't look like somebody that the teammates hate.
Look,
the Chicklets guys put that out. And then apparently after the clip that went viral, because it was one of those Montreal Canadiens fan sites that are where the best people in the world go and follow and all that crap.
You just got somebody who just checked in from Montreal, and you're ripping Montreal.
No, I'm saying the Montreal Canadiens fans who follow the fan page.
We don't know. This guy could be a Canadiens fan too. Just checking in from Montreal.
I doubt it. You should be. By the way, you should be able to pull it up, Ant. I
have no control today.
Okay, fine. I'll make sure that I somehow raise your thing. See, there you go. Obed.
Hello. Hello,
Thanks.
Obed.
Bonjour, ça va?
Ça va bien aujourd'hui, Obed?
Aujourd'hui, absolument.
Hey,
but no, I would say, yes, there are people that are going to be out there who are, always trying to take a prospect down in any sport. I mean, think about how many times we've seen it in the NFL draft, where the minute a guy gets drafted, all of a sudden some like old video of who was the guy who he had video of himself smoking pot. Then they put that out like 3 minutes after he was drafted, or they find like a tweet that he put out when he was 12. right? And they say, "Oh, look what he said 7 years ago," right? I mean, come on. Like, there's always going to be someone trying to take somebody down. You watch the kid play. Watch how his teammates react to him. Yes, is he a little bit more of a, that 18-year-old diva type player, 19-year-old diva, like where that you're that good and you're better than everybody that you're playing with? Yeah, there's a little bit of that in him, but that's every great player is that at 18. Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
in the world we live in now, and I agree. Like, I have a 16-year-old son. And I went through my daughters, like, they're different, I think, girls, but they were such ferocious athletes and the way they competed and stuff. But I will hold nothing like an 18-year-old does if it's not like, there's been cases where the Bruins try to, like, there's been kids that have had real troubled issues. And listen, and I'm not even saying, like, I believe everybody can redeem themselves from whatever you've done. Like, if you're young and you've done something stupid or said something stupid, you deserve to have a chance again to prove to someone you're not. But the thing is, you're right, Anthony, at 18 years old, these kids are so, like, they read their press clippings and they read how good they are on Twitter. Believe me, and I say this because I know he will be humbled. He will come over here and he will be quickly humbled. And that's the way it's supposed to be.
Dono mene gatto, Mr. El Gatto.
What happened?
I don't know.
Russ,
I don't know.
This has been us sometimes for having.
I know this has been happening lately, and I don't know why. I think it's my computer.
Better the other way. Go fucking back to that.
Stop. There's another one. I'm done with you guys.
Hey, Russ, real quick, I think we can do this kind of more in the summer because we're all a little all over the place today.
Mm-hmm.
Comment at 1026 from Lester Nestoga, and I think this is something cool to put up there, and it kind of ties into, gives Bundy an opportunity to talk about Bundy recovery too, because it's not the same thing, but it's along the same line. So I just thought it was kind of interesting. Lester checks in. So go ahead, Russ.
Lester says,
you know what?
Lester says, well, hold on, buddy. Lester says, gentlemen, I suffer from a panic disorder. I was having a bad panic attack. I throw this on and drift away into sports talk, and it really helps relieve my symptoms. Thank you, guys. That's really nice.
You know what? Yeah. And I'll say this, and I don't even care. I think everybody out there goes through something. I'm 51. I still go through anxiety. I still go through battles of depression. I'm not afraid to say it. I don't drink anymore. It changed a lot in my life as my story's told. But people go through a lot, and they do. And the pandemic, like, if you look at some of the things, because I get a lot of data because of the business I'm in, and people have struggled with loneliness, and it changes a lot that happens. And I'm not giving a psychological lesson, but I want everyone to know that we're all in the same boat together. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I understand what a panic, what having a breakdown feels like, an anxiety disorder, and feeling like you're coming out of your skin. A lot of people do, and it's more important we talk about that and letting people know, because there's a lot out there, a lot of great people that are just willing to share their same stories to help anyone else through it. We deal with it, guys, and I'll just say this: I'm not looking for any kind of a promo, but when I first started, we did a lot of addiction stuff at Pennsylvania Recovery Center, and it was a lot of addiction and sober living. But mental health, we've just opened a mental health facility. I put it on LinkedIn, at both a treatment center and mental health housing. So there's no shame in that. I appreciate him having the courage to say that, because I'm in the same boat sometimes. And sometimes what you see behind a camera or people's outward stuff, everybody's dealing with something, And I think it's important to understand that there's no one out there beyond reproach or making mistakes, having faults, and dealing with issues. So I appreciate that. But if this helps, man, I'll tell you what, it helps me coming on, just being with two guys and talking sports. I mean, it's very therapeutic. So if it's helping you, that means a lot to hear that. And again, it's just three knuckleheads out here trying to tee up the hockey season. We don't have a lot yet, but boy, that's meaningful to see that. And I thank you so much for sharing.
Pretty cool.
Really
Thanks,
nice.
Lester.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
Remember there was a few, what was it, a month ago? There was the lady that was going through a kidney transplant.
Yeah.
And the husband was like sitting in the waiting room waiting for her to get out of or maybe she was in recovery. Sent us that really nice message and then sent us an email after the fact. And it's cool. And to your point, I don't really care if we go off the rails with this kind of stuff in the summer. It's okay. But like it does feel nice. I mean, we certainly love when people come on and they're just like, I want to listen to this and, argue in the comments section about, whether or not Michkov should be a center or not. But it is cool when you get to hear that, like, you're, I don't know, part of somebody going through a tough time, and if we can help turn somebody's day around, and it's pretty cool.
Look, we're here for the fans, right? I mean, that's what ultimately why we do what we do, right? We wouldn't exist without the people who listen and check in. So to me, it's always important to get to know our people, to get to know who's checking in on the show and who's listening to the show, and interact with them. And obviously, we're not going to become best friends with any of these people, or maybe eventually, maybe we will. But I'm just saying, at least there should be some level of relationship that we have with them, because it's important. It's important for us to represent them at all times, and we need to know who they are, and when we know these little things about them, it's kind of a cool thing. So thanks.
There's nothing better than when I go to a game, Anthony, and too, and we get the fans come up and say hi to us, like from Snow the Goalie. And I didn't even realize till I was going to games last year that our fan base, how much they listen and love hearing what we got to say about the team. So I appreciate that. And I'll tell you one thing: anybody that comes up and is a fan of ours, of the Philadelphia Flyers, you're A1 in our book. Like, I mean, you're the people that we do it for. They provide an audience, and whether disagree or agree with some of the things we say, that's what it's all about. And we do it respectfully, politely. And the fan base that we've developed in the last year has been unbelievable. Like, to just watch this happen has been one of the coolest things I've ever seen. It really has been.
That's awesome. And Russ, how about the guy who came up to me in Cleveland, who came up to me in Pittsburgh the year before, right?
Yeah.
Found me in the same place 2 years in a row.
Yeah. And it was funny because he called his shot in March saying, maybe I'll run into you in Cleveland or something at a Phillies game. And then he ran into you at the Hall of Fame, right?
Yeah, it wasn't even at the ball game. He ran into me at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He saw me and my dad and my two sons, and he ran into me at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He's like, "Ant, we got to grab a selfie." And we did, and he put it out on Twitter, which was pretty darn cool.
What was funny, I don't remember if I said this on the show. I mentioned before we went to the Cake concert, my wife and I went with my sister and her husband, and I wore the Snow the Goalie shirt just for fun. And two people came up to me and started talking to me about the show. I got a picture with one of the guys. The other guy wanted to know a little bit of the dirt about podcast wars between Flyers podcasts. And I was very respectful, and I explained the situation.
I thought we were the only.
We're the only Flyers podcast. Everybody knows that, but apparently there are some that claim to be a I don't know. It's a whole thing, but that was cool. I felt like, hey, neat. There are people who listen. I'm one thing I will tell people, and I will be careful as we say these things. We're not the only ones who have noticed how much of a following we've gained, and we are not the only people who have realized that there's value in Snow the Goalie, the only Flyers podcast. We'll leave it at that. All right, let's get back to some of the questions, comments, concerns. By the way, Solar Warden dropped this in around what Bundy was saying about everybody going through their struggles. We do. Anyone who tells you otherwise is lying. If you breathe and live on this planet, you've gone through it or will in some form. That's true. Very true. I'm glad that we're all here together. That's why I know that there have been a few people who have DM'd over the last few weeks, and they're like, well, I don't know, doing the YouTube show, kind of prioritizing comments on YouTube instead of just playing it straight like we always did in the podcast feed. It's a little bit helter-skelter. It's all over the place. And we've talked about this, and we say, well, it's the summer. We don't have a game to react to. We're a little bit all over the place, and it's okay. I think that the building of the community, especially on YouTube, as well as on Facebook where people watch, and on Twitter where they watch, letting those people have a place to interact with each other in those comments, that's something. We have that Twitter community. That link is in the description of all episodes as well. It's places that we like. We like the idea of building community. We have thousands and thousands of people who listen to the show, watch the show, all that. It's good to have people that, are, whether you agree or you disagree about different points that are made on the show. We want that community to continue to build. And so it's cool to see that it has. All right. There's really big news that just came out of the hockey world about 10 minutes ago. Tom Wilson has signed a 7-year, $45.5 million contract that's going to start in the
24/6.
7-year, $45.5 million. Yeah, $45.5 million contract extension that will begin in the 24-25 season. That's a lot of money. Your thoughts?
I think there is great value to a team to have a player like that.
I agree.
If Tom Wilson was a Philadelphia Flyer, he'd be beloved.
Yeah, he'd be the most popular player in the team.
And no one would have a problem with this contract. Seriously, and that's the thing. Like, I mean, yes, does it seem like a lot for a guy who's not a, dominant scoring player, or top 6, like real legitimate scoring forward? Yeah, it does seem like a lot for a guy like that. But let's be honest, he's going to be making $6.5 million a year. Okay. And the salary cap is going to keep going up starting next season. So that contract really, by the time you're in, he's 33, 34, is what third line guys are going to be making. And I think it's a good deal for Washington, especially if you're going to be protecting Ovechkin for a couple more years, right?
Yeah, he's turning 30, I think, right? But here's a couple comments, but I have no problem with that because he adds an entertainment value as well to the building. Like, people are going to go watch because Tom Wilson's out there. He's ridden shotgun with Ovechkin and Backstrom. He can play fourth line minutes. He's a pretty effective player, and it keeps everybody on the other team honest still. I mean, he's still he's a guy now that's really, he's really tough, but he can also skate and play the game. He's won a Stanley Cup. He was drafted there. It's a no-brainer move, and I agree with Anthony. If he were a Philadelphia Flyer, he'd be probably the top selling jersey guy on this team, most likely.
It's always interesting to me when a guy like him comes up because you have there. It feels like the polarized nature of debate that not only exists in politics but in sports continues to just like rear its ugly head. And it feels like where there used to be like a gray area or at least some nuance that could be had in a conversation about a player like Tom Wilson doesn't exist anymore. It's like you have the traditional camp of, and there goes my video again. I don't know why, whatever. I'll talk through it. There's the thing where you have the people who argue Tom Wilson doesn't really have a place in this league. He's not skilled enough. It's archaic to think you need somebody who another team has to be afraid of. And then you have this other crew who say, it's vital. It's vital to have somebody that an opposing team knows is going to hold you accountable, is going to throw a body, is going to get in a fight. I mean, he is certainly a better player than your traditional enforcer. He kind of threads that needle. He has value in this league. His value to the Caps is pretty immeasurable. I would have been interested to see what would have happened if he had gotten a free agency, because you would have to assume if you go the Nick Delorier route. Remember back when Chuck said there were 7 or 8 teams with interest in Delorier. All right, let's assume that that's true. Okay, how many teams would have been in on Tom Wilson? You have to think it's at least half the league, right? As long as you had cap space, you have to think that half the league would have been excited about the prospect of adding a Tom Wilson to your team, because his role is not only valuable if you're a top end team, but also for like a young and building team, having a guy like that on your roster is huge. So it's a big number, certainly a big number. There's no doubt, but
I think your camera does that every time you talk too long.
Well, then it should just
it's trying to tell you something.
It's trying to the camera's like, yeah.
I have 2 screens running and I have way too many windows open for work.
I'm tired of recording you, Russell. Stop. Let those guys go. That's what the camera's saying. No, I wanted to get to some other stuff for Bundy here because I know we're going to be wrapping up within the next 15 minutes, or at least I have to wrap up within the next 15 minutes.
Me too. Yeah.
But no, the one before that. 7 years is crazy. He's about to turn 30. His style could break down. It absolutely could. But like I was saying,
not
Jay,
our problem.
Well, yes, it's certain, right? And that's number one. But number two, the fact of the matter is that salary is not going to be that big of a deal. Mm-hmm. By the time he's 35, 36, 37, that salary is going to be nothing. You're going to look at a $6.5 million salary in the NHL and go like, okay, that's just a guy. Right? It's just the way it is. It's the way it's going to be. Having not had raises for contracts over the last few years in the NHL, they're going to come en masse once that cap goes up starting next year. It's just going to, you're just going to see it, and then all those contracts are just going to be, they're going to be nothing in comparison to the big name players. So
we talked about this with the cap last week, though, Ant. Like, the thing is, when they get to the next CBA negotiation, which won't be for a few years, is it going to be small incremental increases to the cap, or are we going to see that bell curve kind of invert, right? Like, is there going to be that moment where like the rocket ship takes off?
Two
where
years.
Where
You're
these
gonna
contracts really
Yeah,
do look.
I still think
ridiculous.
that'll be a pretty sizable contract, though, Anthony. If you look at some of the guys getting paid now, you're seeing 800, 900 for some guys. I mean, that's again, I agree. It's not going to affect any part of of what they're doing for him because he's factored in. But there's guys that make still making like way less for like fill-in players, like gap players.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Keep in mind though. I mean, he didn't last year because he had some injuries. Only played 33 games, but he has had 3 20+ goal seasons.
Yeah,
you know, it's not like he's a fourth line goon, right? He's not a top line player, but he's certainly a middle six guy still. And so when you look at it and you say, 5 years from now, okay, maybe he's not a 20 goal scorer anymore. But in 5 years, where does a $6.5 million contract get you? What does that? Kind of player does that get you? I think you're still looking at third line for sure, and maybe even a couple of fourth line guys will be making that kind of money. I just think that you're going to see such a big jump in the cap. Not necessarily next season, but 2 seasons. Well, the lockout is always a thing.
Well, that's
right?
what they say anyway, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a real concern. By the way, if Bettman oversees yet another lockout in 2026,
unbelievable.
I don't know.
I just don't. 2 full years of hockey under his belt.
Yeah.
2
1
full
seasons.
If you boil down the amount of games. I mean, that is absolutely one of the most incredible stats you'll ever see. A league that has lost in 30 years 2 seasons under the leadership of one guy is remarkable.
And the thing about it is, when we come back to it, ESPN's coverage wasn't great this year. One has to think it'll get better next year or in the years to follow. But at least having it back on that platform, you're at least you have it in the conversation. But when you were locked out multiple years and you were on a secondary network in NBC, that was going to have lasting effects. There's a reason that so many teams right now are trying to build back that equity with their fan base. There's a reason that so many teams are trying to reconnect with their fan bases and try to expand their fan bases. It's because the league in a meaningful way kind of undercut them, took them out at the knees. By the way, Timo's checking in from Finland.
We got Patrick checking in from Sweden, and he has a question for Bundy.
So Patrick says, originally from New England, but ended up chasing.
Could be the Northeast.
Well, I'm going to say New England, but maybe the Northeast.
Northeast
It
Philly.
doesn't say the NE.
Well,
Patrick can clarify. Originally from somewhere in the greater Northeast of the United States of America, but ended up chasing Tall, a.k.a. my wife. Great show. Keep it up. Go Flyers. Bundy, why did you always hit Jagr harder than everyone else?
I don't know if it was hit harder than anyone else. It's just that I used to like goading him. Like I've told the story before. He just tried to go wide all the time. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go wide. You could then kind of like, that was back to, you kind of snug a guy a little bit in the hip and just grab him and toss him in. But no, I skated well with him. He would always try to beat me wide. It got to a point where he'd actually say stuff before games. I'm like, all right, well, bring it on. But I don't think it was any harder than anybody else. I just had certain people have people's number, no matter who they are. And I guess it's just come time for me to just say I had his number. And that's it. It's like anybody else. You can't explain why somebody else had, has the dominant stance against someone who's just a great player and they're not that great a player. So
Bundy, who's the one guy that you like to hit the most? You had to have somebody that you reveled in the chance to lay out clean.
Well, there's always some kind of there's like a little rat out there, and I played Kevin Stevens. He was an annoying guy, and I ended up playing with him later. Artie, man, I tell you what, he'd get under a guy's skin. You know what? Yeah, I will say it, Thomas Sandstrom.
Oh,
I played 1 year against that guy, and that's the guy I used to want to just kill that guy. And I only played against him for 2 years. He was in Pittsburgh. So I remember coming out one day, and this is actually a good story. I think it was a preseason game, and this guy cross-checked. He was up under the neck, and I might have turned around and just chopped him as I was going off the ice. And So someone's like coming off that motherfucker Sandstrom, like screaming at him. It was in Pittsburgh in the old Igloo, and just a terrible building. So we came back, and somebody else got ticked off at him too, as a younger guy, and someone in the locker room said, "Well, if you get really upset about it, Brownie cross-checked him right in the fucking head in about 1985, got suspended for 20 games, and he did. You remember that, Anthony?
Yes,
it was Brownie, like, just went up and he just slapped like a whistle, like, you know what, fuck you, just right across the face. So when I found out after, I'm like, oh, good, I'm glad, that's, thank God, at least somebody got him. I know that there was retribution on him because the whole league wanted to kill this guy.
Yeah.
And anyway, but I found out later that Brownie got suspended, and then somebody in Philadelphia hired him at a comedy club, and they made him come out with like a stick coming out of his head, like the slides came out of the stick.
That's been. I never knew that. That's
that's a true story. So anyway, I used to try to run that guy all the time, but there'd been enough people that had gotten him over the years.
Yeah. Wow. Thomas Sandstrom. How about that? I didn't even think.
Yeah.
It's great. That's a great pull by you. I didn't even think about that name in a long time. Two things, Russ. But I also want to ask Bundy a Jagr question.
Go ahead.
Good morning, Rob, in Fort McMurray, Alberta.
Oh yeah, beautiful.
Yes.
Fort McMurray, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great area of the country out there.
Focus in.
So two things. One, was that just put up the fact that Patrick said he was from Northeast Philly, your subtle way of telling me I was right and you were wrong? I just wanted to make sure.
I just didn't want to interrupt the conversation.
Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to, you snuck it in and then we weren't going to go back to it. I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
But secondly, Bundy, when Jagr came to Philly for that 1 year, obviously you were a broadcaster at that point. I don't know if that was when you were between the boards or between the benches.
No, I was still doing radio, I believe. I'll have to check the numbers. I think I was still doing radio.
I was just curious what it was like, the relationship with you guys just for that year when he came back. Like, because he seemed to be, that year covering Jagr, I grew to really understand why he was such a likable guy. And so I was just curious as to what that became like for you.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, I was retired. He's still playing. Everyone else is retired now anyway, but it was good. We had some pleasantries, and I used to joke with him sometimes. I'd walk by, see him getting ready, and I'd be like, just relax tonight. Go out and have fun there. I said, I'm not out there, so you should have a perfectly good evening. You just smile and laugh.
That's great.
And then, there was another, what else is pretty funny too. We'd have, me and Jonesy kind of like, we would, he did TV, I was doing radio, so we'd see each other. And I remember the team would go into a rut sometimes. And I remember one night I was waiting to get on the back of the plane, and Jagr came up to me and he's like, what did you think about this one play? Or what did you, as I was coming in, what did you think of my game tonight? Basically asked me what I thought. And I'm like, God, here I am now with maybe top 5 or 7 greatest player of all time. And he's asking me as we're getting on the plane what I thought of his game tonight. So I remember going back and we're sitting there and I'm kind of thinking to myself, like, God, thinks how weird things are in life. Here I was at one time, we had one of the great division rivalries where a team in a city used to actually count on me to take the Penguins out because of Jagr. I mean, I used to have my teammates would say it all the time, like, oh, we don't worry about the Penguins. Bundy will take care of it. I'm like, geez, talk about dropping pressure on him. Like, that's what it came to. Like, guys would talk about in the room. So anyway, when I get on the plane with Jonesy, and Jonesy would say, you know what, Bundy? And he'd have guys go talk to him too. He's like, man, when the players start coming up and asking the broadcasters what's going on, we're in trouble.
That's
anytime the player would actually overstep the coaches or to figure out what was going on with their game, they would turn to the broadcasters, who of course were probably easier to talk to. Like me and Jonesy would be two easy guys just to go up and shoot the shit with. And they would come up and they'd talk about it. It was true.
What the hell is that sound?
The landscaper outside. I can't control that. They're cutting the grass. What are you going to do?
Mute yourself while he's talking. Show some respect to a man who was asked by Jaromir Jagr what he thought of his game. My God.
So anyway, that's the story with Jagr and you know what, and other guys. But he was good. I liked him. Again, he was already so decorated when he got here. But I think when you consider those things, I enjoyed my time with him here. He wasn't here just 1 year, but good guy. And, I mean, how do you take away? He's had an incredible career.
Where he was in his career, because like it always felt to me like it was a missed opportunity that he was only here for 1 year. It's not as if he played in the league for 5 more seasons at a really high level, but it did feel like what he was able to do in elevating Giroux's game in a lot of ways, it was kind of a missed opportunity that the Flyers couldn't work out a deal with him. From your vantage point, were you guys ever in that same mindset where it's just like, man, like it would have been good for them, for the development of some of these guys, if they had been able to come up with a 2 or 3 year deal with him? Or was it just time for him to move on? Like what,
Not necessarily. Again, not necessarily. Just because you're that guy doesn't mean that you're going to be necessarily great for every young guy that comes in there. And I think when you're like getting the 40, 42 or whatever, however old he was, I think that becomes a challenge too, to be mindful of everybody in the room. Because the one thing with Jagr here that year, guys, I mean, we'd go through all the stuff with the weight vest at like 12 in the morning, like him doing the extra stuff. And he felt he had to do that. But again, there comes a point where the player, probably at that age puts more focus into himself just to continue finding a way to play a game another night. So I don't necessarily agree that would have been the best thing for a young guy's development into the future.
Okay.
You never know. You just never know.
Let's see.
There was a guy who was a team. Mentioned that he played with Bundy in a charity game and said that Bundy made him a better player.
All right,
that was
this at?
1040 ammo 23.
1040.
Well,
there it is. Ammo 23. I was a teammate of Bundy's in a charity game. I know he made me a better player.
I'm gonna have to get a lobster roll for that today. For that little payoff. Treat myself.
Guys, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to get to here before we head out. We did have a 5-star review, and we know how much Anthony loves 5-star reviews, so we can read that. And if there's anything else that comes to mind, or if you're watching on YouTube and you want to drop a comment or question in here before we head out. 5 stars, the only Flyers podcast worth listening to. We'll take that. I've been listening to Snow the Goalie since before the 2019 season and haven't stopped listening. Russ and Anthony are the perfect pair to speak from the side of fans and writers, and adding Bundy is perfect to get the side of an NHLer. The guests they pull are next level as well, and the crew seems to get genuine answers from their guests and not the same cliche responses. Special thanks to Anthony for answering me on Twitter yesterday and for putting in a good word for the position I applied for with the team. Keep up the great work, fellas. Let's go Flyers.
You know who that's from, don't you?
That's from Hunter.
Hunter Mikos, yeah.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
There was one more question, and it feels like it's a thing that we come back to every single week at this point until it is announced. Andy Strickland said something on a podcast this week about knowing the name of the 5 players that are part of the Hockey Canada report. There has been no movement. There's been nothing that I've heard, and I don't know if you've heard any further developments, but we thought it was going to be last Friday. It could still be today. We're recording this Friday morning. It's possible that later this afternoon or evening, this report could drop. But the last sentence in this is something that we addressed last week, and we need to be careful because we don't want anything to ever come off as speculation, right? But Strickland said that there were significant names. Solar Warden asks, is it safe to say Hart isn't one? I'll repeat the same thing I said last week. It's just like anyone else in your life. The only thing that you know about another person is what they show you and what they share with you. That doesn't mean that you know that person. And athletes, and Bundy, I'm sure, could speak to this. Athletes can do a really good job of looking all shiny and glowing and nothing's wrong, but they might not be that way in private. Not saying that applies to Carter Hart or to any of these players who may or may not be involved. But like, it is ridiculous to me when you go on Twitter and whenever this comes up and you see somebody say, well, this person is shy. There's no way he could be part of this. Or this person seems like a nice guy. There's no way he could be part of this. You don't know. You just don't know. And we don't know.
I represented Hockey Canada many, many times over the years before my Flyers career. I don't know what's gone on over there. But it's been a bizarre 2 years to say the least. And again, I'm not educated enough to know. I know what's going on from reading it. But wasn't this supposed to come out, guys, like after the free agency period or something to get, at least kind of bridge a gap to?
Yeah. There was a belief that, a lot of people in the media, we were kind of under the impression it was going to come out last weekend. I did say was it last week, Russ, or 2 weeks ago? I said that I thought that if it wasn't last week, it would be this week. Yeah. But here we are, the first Friday in August, which, this would be the end of what I've been told is the release dates. Is it possible something happens later today? Sure.
Anthony, is that a legal finding or civil findings in terms of where they're at?
This is the league's investigation. This is the NHL's investigation. I've heard zero out of Canada. So nor would I have access to those people. So I can't. All I have is, some NHL connections that kind of tell me that this is coming. When Andy Strickland goes on his podcast, and Andy Strickland is one of the most well-connected media folk, in the league. Okay.
Sure.
And really one of the best in the US. I mean, in comparison to the guys in Canada. Right. When he comes out and says that there are 5 names and that they're going to get suspended, I think that he's spot on. Now, he said he knows who they are, but he's not going to report the names. A lot of times when you're a reporter, you're put into that position where you're told you cannot say something publicly. So I respect the fact that he's not able to put out the 5 names. But I will say this. If a guy like Andy Strickland's saying that, and he has already heard what he's heard, that report has to be coming really soon. Yeah. He wouldn't put that out 3 days ago and then it not happen for 3 more weeks, right? I mean, I think that that's something that is indicative that this report is about to drop.
There's not a chance that Strickland does know the names and put that out there in an effort to try to get this report out sooner, right? Because I want to be careful in wording this. We all think that it's nonsense that it's taken this long for this report to come out. We all think that it's nonsense that this woman hasn't gotten any form of justice or whatever in this amount of time. Could this be like a way that an influential reporter could theoretically try to hold some feet to the fire? And it's like, at some point you gotta do right by this person, like, or no, like he's in a weird spot. Anybody who would have those names, and like, if people are wondering why he's not reporting them, even if he believes that these are the names, unless he has seen the official report, and I mean, held the official report in his hands, if you risk going public with those names and those don't end up being the names, you're sued. Your career is over. Right. You're going to have libel. It's going to go against your employer. There's going to be a massive lawsuit there. The league could get dragged into it. Like, it could be really bad. The the PHWA, the Pro Hockey Writers Association, it could be a whole big thing. It's not worth, like when you say, is the juice worth the squeeze? In that case, it's not. Again, unless he has seen the actual official report or, had the best sources in the world from like multiple different parts of the investigation, it's just not worth it. You can't do it.
Correct.
So we'll see. I will say that if there were something to develop on that front and it did include a flyer or a member of the Flyers organization, then we certainly would have to do a show and talk about it because there would be massive implications. But as of right now, it's not out there. So we'll have to see. By the way, last thing before we head out, Teddy dangerously sent over a super chat and said, call this an episode about nothing, and said, hi, Bundy. So we already have the episode. The episode's already been named, but I'll promise this, Ted. Next week, barring some kind of massive development, we'll call the next episode an episode about nothing. Because after all, it is the off season, and we are waiting. We're a month-ish away from the start of training camp. Anthony's going to get on the phone with the Flyers today to find out what the dates are, because we can't find them anywhere, as we said during the YouTube exclusive banner before we went live with the podcast.
I think it's later. I have a feeling like it's like end of September kind of start time. Because I saw like a game was like September 26th, maybe the first game. I don't know why I said that for preseason. But if you could, Russ, if you can find the game, if the game's on there for first preseason game, it's usually camp will open like 4 days before that.
Well, here I'm gonna drop something on Anthony since he would be Mr.
First preseason game.
Hold on, Anthony. Hold on.
First preseason game is September 25th.
Buttercup. You were wrong, Ant. Last year's camp did open to fans September 22nd of last year.
Okay, I didn't say I was wrong. It was wrong. I just said whatever.
You said
it
was
open
earlier.
in Labor Day
earlier
for a month.
Yeah. So if
the 9 preseason games,
if the first preseason game is September the 25th, then they're likely starting the beginning of that week.
3 days before that.
You know, so that's what is the 25th? It's a Monday this year.
Yeah, it's my birthday.
Oh, is it really?
They got me, guys. They got me a preseason game for my birthday. How about that? Huh?
So I bet you
first of many wins for the Flyers this year. Eh?
I bet you the players report on Thursday the 21st for physicals, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
That would make sense.
We
assume that they're gonna they'll open all of this up to fans right from the get go. Right?
Oh my God, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I have to think that there's even a chance that they might do something that they haven't really done in the past. Like I would think that we're going to see them do something that might be more of an outreach to the fans, right? With Jonesy in charge of what? What are you laughing at?
I'm laughing at Scott Walker's comment. That's all.
Anthony became the bad of the good, the bad, and the Bundy. Yeah. Yep. See, Anthony's a problem. He's a problem. By the way, there was a really funny comment that was over here about a Bundy spinoff pod from J Toxic 49. Timbits and lobster rolls. Bundy's Kitchen would be a good offshoot podcast.
We could. I could go on and talk food for an hour. Cooking. I love to cook, and some of the stuff that I've eaten over the years that could absolutely probably garner a few ears. That'd be like, wow, that's interesting.
Good morning, you fucking dudes. We're out here at Tim Hortons getting ourselves a donut and a coffee. Lobster rolls. Buckle in. Yeah. I'd love it. That'd be a great show.
That'd be good. All right, listen.
All right.
I really have to go. I've pushed off my meeting for 10 minutes.
We get it. Ant's the only person who has a job. So, all right, we're gonna head out this week. Thank you to everybody who checked in on YouTube. Thanks to everybody who checked in on Facebook and on Twitter. Remember, Snow the Goalie, the Only Flyers podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora. Stitcher, I think, is either dead or dying soon. So make sure if you're subscribed on Stitcher, you switch to another podcast app. We're also on Google Podcasts. Most third-party apps, we're there as well. You can go to youtube.com/@snowthegoalie. All of those links are in the description of the episode, as is our sponsor, Walking the Boards, as is the link to the Twitter community. So if you're on Twitter or X or whatever the hell they want to call it now, you can join the Twitter community there. It's like 400 people strong, I think. If you want to go back and forth about sharing clips of Michkov in the KHL, sharing Cutter Gauthier clips, whatever. You can go there. So, guys, the thing about the bounce back candidates, we'll get to that next week. All right. So I meant to get there. We didn't get there. That'll be next week's episode. Bounce back candidates. So I want every listener out there, mental notes, best Flyers bounce back candidates. We're heading out.
Cue Russ's camera. Cue Russ's camera.
Yeah, there we go. I know. For Ant on Twitter @AntSanPhilly, for Bundy @CTerrien6. I'm Russ @Joanne Broad. Thanks for listening, maybe even watching Snow the Goalie, the Only Flyers podcast. We'll talk to you soon.